My name is Constable Berle Zwaan. I'm in the Community Engagement Division of the Saanich Police Department. I came from the financial crime section where I worked doing financial crimes investigations, and what we saw in the real shift in how fraud was being perpetrated and what the victims were reporting to us in police is really what stemmed designing this workshop. Before we get started and before we keep going, I'd like to just acknowledge with gratitude and humility that the work we do does take place on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Algonquin peoples, known today as Saanich and Esquimalt nations, and the Saanich peoples known today as Sartlip, Pakachun, Sayut, Sekum, and Malahat nations. So why are we talking about fraud? Fraud is huge and the numbers are astronomical. We get numbers from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, who are our partners under the RCMP umbrella. So when victims report fraud to them, they give us those statistics. And you can see here that last year, $554 million were reported by the people of Canada. So that's a huge, huge number. We also know that seniors are a huge part of that. I think North America, Canada is a fairly rich nation. We have a fairly well-off population, so we are prime for targeting by cyber criminals. When I was in financial crimes, we did a lot of work in learning how cybercrime was happening. We collected statistics for our division when I was in financial crimes, and I know that the people of Saanich reported $5.3 million in 2022 in losses. That's just the residents of Saanich. And then last year, $7.7 million. So we also know from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre that probably only 5 to 10% of people report fraud to the police. So all sorts of reasons for that. There's a lot of shame often. But I can tell you that anybody can fall victim to this. It's very easy to fall victim, and it doesn't matter what your background or what your history is or what your knowledge is. Even police officers have fallen victim and our co-workers. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you can fall victim. Now you can also see from this number, in 2023, we only recovered $155,000. So once you send money, it's likely gone. So that's my job, is to teach you how to protect yourself so you're not sending money, and how to protect yourself and recognize that something is a fraud or is a scam. That's what we're going to be doing today. Because we learned, when I was in financial crimes in the almost 3 years, only twice did I ever get enough evidence to submit a report to Crown Counsel for charge consideration, and only once did Crown actually approve charges. Those investigations were probably 8 months to a year long. We have to follow the money. We're tracing the money, and for doing that we have to write production orders and judicial authorizations. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that, whereas the bad guys don't, right? They just take your money. So we'll talk about why and why some of these numbers are important. I won't bore you with too many stats. But first, it's very important to understand what fraud is. I think everybody understands what theft is. If I run up to you and I grab your purse and I run away, that's theft. Most people can understand that. But if I tell you a story and I convince you to give me your money or your purse, and you give it to me willingly, that's fraud if the story that you've told me is a lie. And that's very difficult for me as an investigator to prove. So it's really he said against she said, and Crown looks at those circumstances very closely. And really, once money has left North America, and likely that's happened within 24 to 72 hours of someone being victimized, once it's left North America, the chances of us getting it back are very, very slim. So in the old days, people would knock on your door and say, "Oh, I'd like to build you a shed or a fence." And you'd give them a deposit and they'd never come back. That was kind of the traditional fraud that I investigated when I was on patrol years ago. But now, somebody can be sitting behind a computer and the technology is available that they can target you without even being in the country, right? So a lot of what we're seeing is the threat actors or the scammers are actually in a foreign country where we have no jurisdictional authority, where we can't go and arrest the bad guy. That's not how we can traditionally do business anymore. So really, we've shifted our focus to try and protect the people of Saanich and all of the residents here of Vancouver Island to teach you how to recognize that something is a scam, and that's what we're going to be doing today. There are hundreds and hundreds of stories, right? I can't remember them all, or I can't share them all. We would be here for hours and days. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre has a website that has tabs and tabs and pages of all the different stories that have ever been reported to police. If you're interested, you're welcome to go to that website to have a look. The top 5 that we are reported to from victims, that's what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to talk about these 5 themes in more detail. And I think if you start recognizing the red flags from each of these different themes, you will be able to recognize any scam because they all kind of overlap and are very similar in some ways. They all have certain components that are very similar. And then it won't matter. The stories change all the time. It depends what's happening in the news, what's happening in the world, when the war in Ukraine broke out, we saw scams about fundraising for people in distress. When the COVID broke out, we saw all sorts of PPE scams. So it just depends on what's happening. When Global News announced on its news channel that people were getting back money through ICBC, we saw text message scams about that after. So it just depends on what's happening and whatever they can use to turn into those types of scams. So let's talk about you're in trouble. So this is the scammer wanting to make you feel like you're in trouble, right? So how many people have a computer? Just about every hand went up, okay? So everybody is potentially target rich for this type of scam, right? If you have a computer, you're browsing, you're maybe searching the internet, and you're getting emails, you're maybe doing your online banking, and you could get pop-ups on your computer. Now this is very hard to show because I'm not in my presentation mode. Yeah, sorry, I normally go through these, but because I'm not in presentation mode, it doesn't show them one at a time. So we're gonna have to visualize, if you are searching on your computer browsing, and you have a pop-up that shows up that basically says you have a virus, what would you do?
Shut it down.
Shut it down by Xing out of the corner, right in the corner there. What if that doesn't work? What do you do next? Delete, okay. Turn it off manually, yeah. So that means like Control-Alt-Delete or shutting it right down, unplugging it, booting it back up again. And again, what if it doesn't disappear? What would you do next? Sorry, say that louder.
I said call my computer.
Exactly. So you call someone that you know and trust, right? Or you physically shut your computer down and bring it to somewhere that you know and trust in person. You don't phone the number that shows up on that pop-up warning, right? Now, does everybody understand the difference between Apple and PC? So one is just a different operating system. They both do the same thing. You can search, you can do online banking, you can do all those things. But if you get a message that specifically, if you're on an Apple computer and you get a message saying that this is a Windows environment and you have a virus, you would maybe think, okay, this is a pop-up, right? That's potentially a scam. But if you actually had a Mac and it showed that, then you might wonder. And now Macs or Apples do have actually Apple support. There is a phone number that you phone in to get help. But again, you don't trust the number that pops up. You independently look up that number, you phone Apple support, and they will likely send you to a local Apple support dealer, somebody that deals with Apple internally here in Saanich, right? Here's another example. So again, the story changes, right? It's something about you or your property or your finances that's in trouble. So you have a computer virus, your finances are in trouble. This is Amazon. There's been an unauthorized purchase on your card or on your account. Whatever it looks like, the overall theme is that something about you or your finances or your property is in trouble. You have to act now. And if you don't, something bad is going to happen. That's kind of the theme. Just about every victim that I've talked to afterwards, they're like, I didn't know what to do. I thought I had to, right? They get so overwhelmed and they're so scared. The scammers are so good at pressurizing them to do what they say that people aren't thinking clearly. And what that's called is like your fight or flight response, right? Our center cortex of our brain, our lizard brain, is our fight or flight response. And what I want you to do is think about that in the financial world, there is nothing so urgent that you have to act right now. Nothing. What happens if the bank does send you a message? What happens if there is a transaction on your account that's suspicious? What will the bank do? Sorry?
My bank phones if there's a problem.
Okay. We'll talk about phoning banks, but that may or may not work.
No, I know, because how do you know they are?
Exactly.
Well, I usually hang up and then phone my bank.
Okay, that's good. So if in doubt, you go in person to the bank, or you phone what number?
Bank, yeah.
Where do you get that number from?
Bank card.
The back of your bank card, or the back of your Visa or credit card, right? Those are the only two or the only three numbers that you actually trust, and even those, we've heard of situations where sometimes you can't trust that, but we'll talk about that as we go. So no matter what sort of message you get or what sort of thing you receive, whether it's a phone call, a text message, an email, or a pop-up, just don't act on it, just step back, slow down, and check things out, right? Here's an example of a BMO one. This is a warning that there's been some problem with your account. If you've set that up within your online banking. So how many people do online banking? Okay, so you can get notifications through text messages or through emails or through phone calls depending on what you've set up within your accounting system, within your online system, that will phone you, text you, or email you depending on a transaction limit or if there's something outside of your normal behavior. But if they are worried about something, they will just automatically freeze your account. And the only way to reactivate it is you have to go in person to the branch or you have to phone them from the number on the back of your card. Anything with a link in it is suspicious because a scammer likely has sent that to you and they're phishing, vishing, smishing, quishing. Have you heard of those terms? Those are all different types of social engineering to try and get you hooked, right? So they're literally throwing a line out, hoping somebody will respond. Smishing is SMS texting, vishing is voicemails, phishing is phone calls, quishing is QR codes. And all they're trying to do is redirect you to some sort of link that they've created or a website that they've created that's likely fraudulent. So no matter what the story is, right? You haven't paid your taxes. What happens if you don't pay your taxes on time? And how do they do that?
Add it on next year.
They add it on to the next year. They send you a letter in the mail. Do they come and drag you to jail? No. Do they freeze your bank account? No. Do they shut off your power? No. Do they make you pay Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or gift cards? Not a real one, right? That's the scammers trying, but the actual CRA is not going to do that, right? So if it's a reputable government agency, think about how they normally do business, and if it's different from that, be suspicious of it. Don't trust it. Let's talk about this one. So now not you're in trouble, but someone you care about is in trouble. So very similar to the first theme we just talked about, but now, you know, it's maybe a phone call. Grandma, I've been arrested. What do you say?
Hi.
Okay, perfect. So don't even answer the phone. How many people have a cell phone? Just about everybody. And do you have your contacts, your friends and families entered into that cell phone under your contacts? No? If you don't, I highly suggest you do that, because if you're getting a phone call, it will show you who of your contacts is phoning. And if it's somebody you don't recognize, it won't pop up. So if you get an unsolicited, unrecognized phone call, don't answer. Nothing is so urgent that you have to answer the phone. That's kind of where we're living today. Even if it's the doctor's office or the hospital phoning about a CT scan or an ultrasound appointment, they will leave a message and you can phone them back 2 minutes later. If it's your neighbor or your family member, they'll leave a message if it's legitimate and you can again phone them back. If it is a family member, they should be listed in your contacts and they should show you that it is actually them. But even that we have to be suspicious of nowadays. So we'll talk about that as we go. So the ones we've seen lately, if you answer the phone, you didn't, which is great, but if you answer the phone and you say, oh, I don't have a grandson named Johnny, you've just shared a piece of information that you do actually have grandchildren, and it's not Johnny. So they'll keep trying to engage, right? So we don't want to share any personal information. What are the scammers after? What do they want from you? Money, number one. Number two? Information. And what does that mean? What does information mean?
Credit card, social security.
Name, date of birth, address, social security number, your license plate, your bank account numbers, anything that is private, your phone numbers, right? You want to be very careful with who you share that information with. So this is the latest ones that we've had. These are two text examples. The first one we talked about the I'm in trouble. Those often, the screen pop-ups, those are, a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 in losses often. These, same thing, several $1,000s in losses. This happened to a coworker of mine. Her mom got this text message. She actually went to the bank because she thought her daughter had lost her phone and she wanted to send money to help support her daughter. Now, how could you see if you are actually worried about somebody that you care about, if you think they might be in trouble, what could you do? Phone them directly, exactly, on the number that you have for them independently, not what they send you, right? Because likely that's a scammer fishing for you to respond to them, or smishing in this case.
I phoned their mother.
You could do that too. It depends on the age, right? But like I have two boys, I would just phone them directly. If they start asking me for money, I would double check and make sure I actually knew who it was. If you don't give money to someone that you don't know face to face, you should be safe. That's the best protection. There's often a level of secrecy. I can tell you if we arrest someone here in Canada, we can't release that information out until those charges have been made public. And even then, we're very careful about releasing that information. So we would never, ever phone a member of the public that we've arrested someone. If they're an adult, if it's a child, I actually have to contact their parent or their guardian and get them to come to the police station, and I would release them into their care. So there's very specific laws on what we can do and what we can't, and we would never, ever, ever phone asking for money for those kind of circumstances. That's all just make-believe from TV, mostly. Lottery scams. We see these a lot as well, often through pop-ups or advertisements or emails that people get. I'm a member of Costco. How many people here are Costco members? Many of you are. That's a membership that you yearly pay, and you have to update your information so they have your name and address. So if I get an email that looks like this, it looks very legitimate, but the first thing is you can only win a contest that you've actually entered. That's the easiest way to protect yourself, right? So if you haven't entered that contest, it's not real. So when I look at this looks fairly legitimate. There's a link. It looks different in some things. Sometimes it actually has like an HTTP address, but sometimes it's a button. Anything with a link is suspicious. It has different font, which again, if it's from a reputable business, should look the same. They have people that look at grammar and spelling and all those sorts of things. Now AI is going to change this. They're going to fix all those mistakes. Often these are created where English is not the first language, and if you actually read it out loud to yourself, you'll see that it doesn't often make sense. There's some grammatical and punctuation and spelling errors sometimes, but again, AI is going to fix those things. So we can't use that anymore. The best thing for lottery scams is if you didn't enter it, you can't win it. So be very careful. Now, how many people go to their grandkids' Christmas concerts? Or school fairs or something, or you go to Perks Arena and you go to the home show. So if you go to your grandkids' Christmas concerts and the pack has a table set up and you can buy a basket or a raffle gift basket, remember that you put your name and address in that, so when they phone you, you can remember that you entered that contest. Now if you're going to the home show and you can win a Yeti cooler or a barbecue or some other fancy thing, I'm not saying don't, but think about who you are giving your name and information to. Is that a legitimate business? Has it been around for a long time? What are they going to do with that information? Just be very cautious and think about who you're sharing your private information with. Anytime there's fees, again, that's a big red flag, and there should be some good suspicion there. So here, I have to pay shipping fees in order to win this contest that I didn't enter. So easily I can see that that's a fake scam attempt. So I would just delete and not respond. We'll see some of this come up in other things.
Oh God. Sorry, I was just looking at the latest crypto giveaway scam. Shout out to the scammers for doing a decent job imitating a real brand. You really had me here for a second. But when it comes to giveaways on social, here's a couple things to watch out for. Scammers start by creating an account that looks very similar to a real one. That also includes faking a verification badge. Sometimes they'll even impersonate celebrities or famous people in the crypto space to have the credit. So, double check the spelling, have a look at their follower account, regardless of what their name is. Now, as for the giveaway itself, usually all they ask for is for you to click on the offer and then send crypto to prove your account is legit, because they don't want to be scammed, when really they're scamming you. Because once you've sent that payment, your crypto is gone. It's a nice trick. Know the signs, spot the scams.
So the BC Securities Commission created these commercials in March of this past year for Anti-Fraud Month. They come on sometimes in between the global news and different news segments when they're doing the money talks. The BC Securities Commission is a great resource if you're thinking about doing some sort of investment, right? So what we're going to be talking about next is investment scams. And again, we see huge losses in these type of scams. And again, they play out over many months. They're very similar to romance scams. But now it's more, about the green goblin. People want to get rich quick. If it's too good to be true, if it's get rich quick, if you have to hurry up and do something now, otherwise this investment opportunity is going to be gone, all those kind of things, it's probably a scam. We all work long and hard for our money. How many people use a bank? Okay, we all do, right? So we have a relationship with that bank because maybe we live in that neighborhood, because we've gotten a mortgage there, because maybe our parents use that bank. There's a reason why we've developed a relationship with that bank, and we don't traditionally just get up and move banks, once a week or whenever. It's maybe if we have to renew our mortgage and we can get a better rate at a different bank, or there's a reason why we change institutions, but generally we stay with that institution for a long time. So why would you not check in with that investment advisor if you're going to be making some sort of investment? Scams come in really most of the time nowadays in 3 different ways: phone calls, text messages, or emails. And I'm going to show you some things about that, why that is. We're going to listen to a phone call if I can make that work. I can find my mouse. There it is.
This message is for you from the Criminal Investigation Department of Revenue Canada. The reason behind this call is to notify you that we have registered a criminal case against your neighbor concerning tax deficiency and tax fraud.
So probably everybody's received a phone call that sounds sort of like that. What do you notice about that phone call?
They don't know your name.
Yeah, they don't ask your name. It's computer generated.
It's pre-recorded.
Yeah.
That means it's sent to millions of
Exactly.
different numbers.
Exactly.
And they can't all owe 300 names.
Exactly. So whatever the story, right? Whatever the phone call that you receive is, if it's automated, if it's computer generated, if you have that delay that shows likely that's coming in from a foreign country, and that system all goes with this. Voice over Internet Protocol is the technology that's used to create those phone calls, those computer generated phone calls, and they decide, okay, today we're going to do the Victoria area code. And I often get the question of, I get a phone call at 6 o'clock every morning, and it's from 250-360-0011, or whatever the number is, doesn't matter. But why are you not arresting my neighbor who's phoning me at 6 o'clock every morning? It's not your neighbor, right? They've line trapped that number, and just because your call display says that number doesn't mean that they're actually using that. Sometimes you see a V in front of it, Sometimes it could even show that it's the Saanich Police calling, or the Royal Bank calling, or the CRA. Last week we had somebody receive a phone call from the Royal Bank, and that's what it showed on their call display. And that person said, "This is the Royal Bank. We've noticed an unauthorized transaction on your account. Did you make this transaction for whatever it was, however much?" And the person said, "No, I did not." They went, "Okay, thank you. We'll cancel that. What other banking institutions do you have accounts at so we can check those?" And she gave them that information, and the fraudster took money out of that. It wasn't actually the Royal Bank calling. So if in doubt, separate yourself from that phone call, and in person, go to the bank and get it checked out that way, or in person or on your online banking, log in yourself without the assistance of what that person is. A legitimate bank security from the bank will just ask you about that transaction. They will not ask you about any other accounts. They will never ask you for your PIN number associated to your card, right? They shouldn't ask you any private details because they have it in front of them if they're legitimate, right? So that's sort of the spoofed numbers and the line trapping. Line trapping, we don't hear of that often anymore. And basically what that means is that they're pretending to be the police or the CRA or the Royal Bank. But then again, we had them start up again recently with that Royal Bank one. So, you know, things go in phases and it depends what's happening. They're trying different things to see what works. One day they might try this, one day they might try that. The technology is available. If you get a phone call, it's unsolicited and you don't know who they are, don't trust it and go in person, independently check out what they're saying, right? There's always another way to check it out. I think we've talked about all these other things. No time to think, pressure, fast talk, no social niceties. They're doing their scripts, right? Text message. So we see a lot of these, that phone example we talked about that my coworker experienced, and it's often unsolicited. It's still the same. If you get an unsolicited phone call from someone or a text message from someone that's not in your contact list, be suspicious of it. Don't trust it. So here's examples. Usually I just bring them up one at a time, but this person is not in my contact list, so it doesn't show who they are. If it's someone from within your contact list, it should show what they are, right? And they often start very innocently, like, "Hey, do you have a minute to chat?" They're not asking for anything, they just want to talk. Or, "Hey, I like your Facebook account. Can we be friends?" We hear those all the time too. So it doesn't matter how it comes in. If it's from somebody that you haven't heard from for a long time, just be suspicious, be cautious, and check independently if they start asking for things. Here's a Canada Customs example. So many of us order parcels on Amazon or on different shopping websites. Again, be very cautious when you're filling out your information. I have another credit card that I use for my online banking that has a lower limit so that if it's compromised, only so much can be compromised. I often use PayPal or another system to sort of have another layer of encryption behind it. And when you are ordering a parcel, you put your name and your address and everything in it. So they should not be sending me this saying that I need to confirm my address, because they already have it if it's legitimate, right? When you read this one out loud to yourself, this is Canadian Customs, you have a parcel being delivered or cleared due to detection of an invalid zip code. We don't have zip codes here. We have postal codes, right? But it's very subtle sometimes, the mistakes that they make. So what happens here if you order a parcel and Canada Post can't deliver it to you? What are they going to do? Leave you a note or a card in your box, and what do you have to do? Yeah, you have to go in person to the post office and pick up your parcel, right? If a courier service can't deliver, again, they'll leave you a card and there's a phone number that you can phone. Sending you a text message, not legitimate, unless within that parcel ordering you've set up tracking, right? But that should be, you know, it's gone from Victoria to Cobble Hill to the Cowichan Valley to it, you should be able to track it and trace it, and you'll have a tracking number that's legitimate. Not some strange text message that's unsolicited. Here's one again we had last week. I was doing a presentation, 2 weeks ago. Somebody had received this. I got this as an example so that I could show it in my presentations. This looks very legitimate. It looks like an RBC website, doesn't it? Or like an RBC text. But again, it comes from a strange number, and RBC is not going to be sending a text message like that. And especially when you read it, your RBC client card starting with 4519. All RBC client cards start with 4519. So that's an easy one to see that that's a scam, right? And there's a link. How helpful. If it's legitimate, they should just be saying, log into your system, and you independently know how to do that. So you go to your RBC online banking and log in. They should not provide you a link. Most reputable organizations follow that protocol. Not all, but most. Never click on a link because you don't know where that's bringing you to. Here's another example from the CRA. Same thing. Your climate action incentive payment has not been claimed yet. To claim it, click on this link. So what's going to happen if somebody sends you a refund? How are they going to do that?
Check or deposit it to your account.
Yeah, traditionally, they will send you a check in the mail, refund it to your Visa if that's how you paid for that product or your debit card, or they'll do an automatic deposit, right? If it's legitimate with the CRA, it'll be one of those two methods because that's traditionally how we pay those bills, how we get and receive money from those. If it's different, be suspicious.
So the government wants me to pay with gift cards?
It's a scam, Margaret.
Who's that?
It's your voice of reason. Hang up.
Oh, hi, Voice of Reason. He's a scammer?
The government of Canada wouldn't ask you to pay for anything with gift cards. Go check out their site.
Thanks, Voice of Reason.
Listen to your voice of reason before you act.
You can go now.
Canada.ca/BeScamSmart can help. A message from the government of Canada.
So there's lots and lots of resources out there for you to learn more about this. Be Scam Smart is a website resource that the Canadian government has as well. I often go to it to get material, to keep updated on information. That's just a little blurb so you don't have to listen to my voice the whole time. Here's an email example. So email, this is an area where, again, I think text messages and emails and advertisements are going to get fixed and look even better because of AI. Everybody understand what AI is? AI is brilliant technology. There's many good things coming out of AI, but we need to keep up and learn about how it can be used in scams as well. So here's an example of a Netflix email that I received. How many people use streaming services? So Netflix or Crave or Amazon Prime. Anybody have those things?
I have Crave
Okay. So then how do you pay for that service?
through the company I get my internet from.
Okay, so that's a service that you've added on, and usually you automatically pay for that through that service by your Visa or by whatever credit card you've registered with that service, right? So if you get a message like this that says your membership is expired, whether it's Amazon or Crave or Prime or any of these things, that doesn't make sense, does it? Because unless your credit card is expired, it should still be working. So that's my first red flag. When I read it again, there's some font differences here. Dear customer, not Dear Miss Zwaan. I'm a member. They have my information. I signed up for that account. They know my name. If there's a legitimate concern, they should say, Dear Miss Zwaan. There's an issue with your account or something like that. And then here, but as part of our loyalty program, you can now extend for 90 days for free. Nothing is for free. And then there's a link. How convenient again, right? A button with a link. And then when you look, everybody understand when you're looking at email, if you hold your cursor over the name of the sender, it will show you the email address associated to that to that name. Everybody understand that when I say that? So if we do that here, if I hold my cursor over that name there, it will show me the email address behind. And it should make sense. So if I send an email, it should be from bzwaan@saanichpolice.ca. If it's from the Royal Bank or CIBC, it should be from your advisor, maybe their first initial, their last name at rbc.com or cibc.com, but it should make sense, right? Same with the CRA, same with a reputable business. If you get a strange email address, again, it's going to be tricky to show you. Normally I have a little thing that moves and it shows the email address behind, and it's actually some weird email address. It says ygteacher@gutschmerher.com or something. Like, it's a really weird name and it doesn't make sense. So I can immediately see that that's a scam attempt, right? They've tried to send me something hoping I'll click on that link, and it's not real. They'll direct me to a website where they want me to put my information and my credit card in. That's what they're looking for. Here's another same story now, different method. So here's a text message example. Again, it comes from a very strange email address. Again, very difficult to see here. And there's a link, and the email address doesn't make sense. First of all, Netflix or the CRA, they're not going to send you text messages, right? So if you get something like that, don't trust it. I even saw during our first immunizations, somebody had received a strange text message, what looked like our COVID vaccination, but they were saying something to the effect of, down in the States, they'd announced people could get $100 back for getting immunized. And so they were playing on that and trying to use our notification system for that. So if in doubt, just independently go to the right source and check that out, right? They're not going to do that here. Social media. So how many people have Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, or there's lots of different examples. It doesn't matter what you use or how many different ones you use, you want to be very cautious about what information you put out there. Right? Now with AI, they can use any information that you post potentially to create a false granddaughter or grandson or child that looks and sounds just like your family member. So we want to be very cautious on what we put out there. I used to post pictures of my kids and what grade they were in and how happy they were to be starting school again, or how happy I was. But now I post pictures of my chickens. I don't post anything really that's important, right? So be very cautious. I also suggest that you have a passphrase with your family. So we used to do stranger danger and a password, right? Now we want a passphrase, and that should be that you share that amongst your family group. And if somebody phones and you're not actually sure who they are, because maybe they sound like your loved one and they're suddenly asking for money and that's out of the ordinary, you can ask them for the passphrase. And if they don't know it, you hang up, because it's likely AI calling you pretending to be your loved one, right? That's sort of the stage we're at. So here's a couple more examples. BCAA members, lots of us are BCAA members. BCAA sent out a legitimate email a couple weeks ago saying that some people had received this scam notification. So this is the scam, and BCAA was legitimately notifying all of its membership that somebody had sent that out hoping to collect information from its membership. The Cordova Bay 55 Association a couple weeks back again had a big issue. They had posted their membership online. Not everybody, but the president and the vice president and some key members of their association had their names and email addresses posted, and somehow a scammer pretended to be one of those people and sent notices out to the membership pretending to be that person, and had the membership actually hovered over the email to see that it wasn't actually coming from that person, they would have recognized that it was a scam attempt, but they were being asked for gift cards, and some of the membership fell for that. So we just have to be very aware and cautious of what we do. If it's out of the normal, just check in person with that organization or agency. In November, December, our Chinese community fell for this one. Not this exact ad, but it was an ad on social media that they saw. It was basically a famous person endorsing something, right? So just because a famous person is endorsing something does not mean it's real. This was, I think it was Justin Trudeau endorsing some sort of wealth investment advertisement. And our Chinese community lost almost $2 million. So we have to be very aware of that. Just because it's somebody famous doesn't mean it's actually real. Anybody can create that with AI. Here's an example that I just about fell for. I'm a Costco member. I live on an acre, and I have several of these chairs, and I thought, ooh, that's a really good price. Normally, they are about $159 or $169, and I thought, wow, that's a good price. Whoop, wrong button. And I went to click on the link and started to put my name and credit card information and thought, oh, I should take my own advice. I backed out before I finished entering and realized it's not Costco. It's an advertisement made to look like Costco, but it's actually the Quick City store. So that's how easily it can happen. You just have to be very aware of what you're clicking on and what you're doing. I was doing one of these presentations a couple months ago. The wife was in the presentation and the husband was at home renewing his Times Colonist subscription. If you are going online and you are searching on a website and you are, you should be very aware of what website you're on. So here he had actually put in the correct website. So he'd put in Times Colonist /subscribe. And he hit this start button, thinking he was renewing his Times Colonist subscription. Can anyone see what he was actually doing? It's hard from the back there. Even I have a problem seeing it from here. Anybody see what that is? What this box is?
The X.
Hmm?
The X in the top corner.
Mm-hmm. So there's an X there, which means that this is actually a banner ad. So as soon as he hit start, this URL would have changed to something called contentlists.com, and he was actually signing up for a subscription service, for a streaming service. So this is not fraud necessarily, but it's very tricky, and it is something that I think many people can fall victim to. When you go to a website and there's pop-ups, just be very, very cautious on what you're clicking into. And always read down to the bottom of the page before you put any information in, because you just don't know what's happening. And if you don't understand, maybe don't do it this way. So had he read right to the bottom, it said payment information cannot be registered online at this time. Please call the office to register. Now since then we've let Times Colonist know, and they've actually removed that, and that can't happen anymore. It's not malicious in that it's just a banner ad. When I go there now, that ad is gone. They've actually removed that space. But just be aware that that is possible, right? So let's talk about AI. I don't know if you can see who's in the picture here, but it's sort of timely with our current politics. This was shown on my Facebook feed, so I just stole it from my Facebook feed, because I thought it was a really good illustration of how AI can be used to provide us with information or misinformation. Now, just because you see it online doesn't make it true, right? You always want to do independent research to check and to see if what you're going to be doing is real or not. And there's lots of different ways to do that. One of the best ways that we can protect ourselves is to use good passwords. When I started doing this presentation in 2022, this chart was very different. I don't know if you can read it from back there, but it talks about passwords and how many characters you should use in your password. So passwords need to have uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and characters in them to make a good password. And we want really passphrases now, not just single passwords. So in my world, a good password is yellow chocolate number 56 Cadillac fish. That is an example of a really solid password that AI can't crack. Now, for things like your banking, your pension, your CRA, your health information, we want those to be different, and we want them to be really good passwords. This shows here, a year ago in policing we were using 8-character passwords. And this number here says 1 second, but used to be 8 months. So this whole chart, this whole column has shifted drastically to where now we are using 12 character passwords because that takes AI 8 months to crack. But it used to say 30,000 years. So that's the impact of AI in the last year on passwords and computer safety in that sense. So I have this information, everything that we're talking about that's really important I have on handouts for you to take, so you don't have to remember it all. And this is one of the things. You can also go to a website called Have I Been Pawned? The A is missing there, that's on purpose. That was created, and you can actually go onto that website, you can type your email address in there and see if your email address is out in the World Wide Web. If it is, I would strongly suggest that you change your password for that system, for whatever you're using that for, right? We want you to remember your passwords. So it's really tough to do if you're using passwords like that, right? So you need some sort of password manager or a way to remember your passwords. So those of you with cell phones, do you understand what the App Store is? Yeah? So you could go into the App Store and you could download yourself a password manager or some sort of password protector. But again, when you go into the App Store and you type password manager, don't just download the first one that you see. Because my thought is, well, wouldn't that be an easy way to collect passwords for things? So if somebody's trying to crack into your system, if you have a password manager that was just created 3 months ago, has only 300 users, and all of them are 5-star, versus a password manager that's been around for 8 years, has 34,000 users, most are pretty happy, but some are not. That's probably a smarter choice. But you're all smart people. You can all evaluate and learn how to choose a good password manager. But don't just trust the first thing. Do some research, check, and see what others are using. Some are free, some you pay for. Here's some examples of some fairly reliable ones. Multi-factor authentication. Does anybody know what that is? So on our phones, when you log into your banking system, you put in your password, you put in your login, then your password, and then they send you a code, either to your cell phone, they phone you, or they send an email to you, however you've set that up. And that's called dual factor or multi-factor authentication. Again, for all of your important systems, we want you to do that. So again, for your CRA, for your banking, for your health, for your pensions, make sure you do dual factor authentication. All of our systems are moving towards that. Our phones nowadays use our fingerprints or our faces to open, computers as well. Again, that means that you have to actually have the device in hand, and it's another layer of authentication. We are moving towards pass keys, where when you log into a website or you log into a system, that website will provide the first half of the pass key. Your device and your system will do the other. They'll marry up, they'll recognize each other because of your face or your fingerprint, and you won't have to remember passwords. That's where we're moving to, and we can already see that in Google and in Safari. They have password generators that have those big, strong, long string of characters, and they'll save them for you on your device. Those are fairly reliable systems. Just always have a backup plan in a way that you can access that system in case that crashes. Right? So think about legacy and who you're going to turn over your passwords to in the future, or how you're going to have a backup system. I had not one of those. I now use one of those, but I had a different password manager before. And then in December of last year, I got myself a new phone, and you know how the old phone will transfer to the new phone when you show them the code and it'll bring everything over. That app would no longer open because it was no longer supported and updated, and I lost access to all my passwords. So now I have multiple backups. Lesson learned. I have one of these systems. I also have it written down or typed out and hidden in my house and in a safety deposit box. And When I store it in these systems, I maybe encode it. So rather than saying yellow chocolate number 56 Cadillac fish, I'll go color, ice cream, number, address, fish, and I know what that means. So that if one of these systems ever gets compromised, it's still not going to be able to access my system. But that depends on how savvy you are. Okay? There's a lot. I know this is a lot. We're just about done. We've talked about this, multi-factor authentication. Some quick things. We see a lot of scams where people have given control of their devices, either their phones or their computers. So the example I gave was when the gentleman allowed them to help him set up the investment app and the investment website. We have lots of other examples where this is Shaw, this is Rogers, we need to update your device or update your system. Can you please give us access into your computer? If it's an unsolicited phone call, be very cautious. If you've called a technician to come to your house or you've called for support and service, that's very different. If it's unsolicited, out of the blue, I would be cautious. There's always a way that you can go in person to check that out. Never share your PIN number, your banking PIN number associated to your debit card. The banks are very good at supporting their clients if people have fallen victim to fraud by accident or they didn't know what they were doing. If you willingly give money or send money to someone, the bank's not going to support you that way. But if you've by accident clicked on something or given access and you can figure out how it's happened and you didn't realize it was actually a fraud, the banks often will support their clients. But if you've given your debit card with your PIN number taped on the back because you have a caregiver that's coming over to get groceries or you have somebody that needs to go get some money for you, the bank will not cover you if that turns out to be fraudulent. There are systems in place that you can go to at the bank that will help you set up things so that you can be safe and keep most of your finances safe. They can have limited access to certain things. Never deposit a check or a money order from an unknown source. So let's say, how many people use Victoria, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace? We don't have the traditional bulletin boards with numbers that we rip off anymore for selling something. Usually we use one of those platforms and there's many of them. Nothing wrong with them, they work really well. So I'm listing my computer for $400. I've put it up, somebody sends me a message, say, ooh, I'm interested in your computer. I'll send you a check for $1,000. You send me the change, I'll come pick up the computer tomorrow. What's wrong with that picture? Yeah, lots, right? We get those every week to our front desk. People have fallen for that all the time. And that's a bit of a twist on, you know, I have a rental listing or something, you need to pay a damage deposit before you even get to see the apartment, and you need to fill out your landlord tenancy agreement before you've even met the landlord. So we see those all the time as well. That's sort of a different version, but similar, right? Different story, same method. The scam there is that they're getting your money first before you actually see the product or they get the product, right? Now, e-transfers. A lot of people are leery about e-transfers. They work very well, but again, if you're going to do an e-transfer with someone, make sure you actually meet them in person. You can do your phone number or your email for that e-transfer, however you've set that up with your banking, and that takes time to process. It takes maybe 20-30 minutes to land in the account. So if I let someone leave with this and they've sent me the $400 by e-transfer and it hasn't landed in my account yet, they could recall it and cancel it, and I would be out my computer and the $400, right? So nothing wrong with them. They work really well, but you need to allow time for that transaction to happen. We've talked about this, never share personal information. Really your SIN number, your bank, your employer, and the CRA are the only people that need that. If others are asking for that, you don't need to provide that. Don't do transactions over the phone. You know, some people do online or phone banking. They're starting to move away from that because of the encryption services that we can do with online banking. But there are people that still do that. So just be aware of the difference. I think we've talked about this. We've seen lots of scams recently around gift cards. Most money that is fraudulently lost by victims takes 24 to 72 hours before it's gone or before it's out of the country. And most victims don't realize that they've been victimized until after that time period. So if you recognize suddenly like, oh, I think I just fell for something, the quicker you notify your bank or the police, the quicker they can freeze the money and hopefully get it back. If you've bought gift cards or something like that for your grandchild or for your child as stocking stuffers, there's nothing wrong with gift cards. But if somebody's asking you for gift cards through a different method and then wants the back of them because they're your boss or they're the head of the society or whatever the story is, be cautious of that, right? Once you give them the codes on the back, it's gone. Really, your best protection is to recognize that it is a scam. And hopefully with some of the things we've talked about, you'll start to see those red flags and recognize, even if the story is different, that the red flags are kind of all the same in all the different stories. I'm giving you permission to be rude, to hang up, to delete, and not respond. You know, we often have to tell people that. We are taught traditionally to answer the phone and to respond and to be nice and be kind to our neighbors. We are now living in a world where you can take a pause and just double check that it is truly your neighbor or your friend that's calling you. If it is, of course, support them. But if it's a scammer, just hang up right in the middle. You do not have to engage with them. If you are unfortunately victimized, the quicker you can notify the bank or the credit card company, the quicker you can get support. The one case where I've actually had success in recovering money, within 6 hours, the money had moved from Victoria to Vancouver to Toronto, and we were able to freeze it in Toronto, and then it took us 6 weeks to apply for all the production orders to get it back, but we did get it back finally. So that was a bit of a success. The police, we won't get your money back for you, unfortunately, likely, right? We've had very slim success that way, but we will be able to at least help you figure out how it's happened and to stop it from continuing to happen and to stop others from also falling victim to that. Notifying Equifax and TransUnion, do you know what those are? Equifax and TransUnion are credit bureaus through the bank. So if you've been the victim of fraud or identity theft, if you notify Equifax and TransUnion, they will put a fraud alert flag on your file. So if somebody's applying for a loan product in your name, and it's not actually you, if you have that fraud alert flag on your file, they will scrutinize that person extra carefully to make sure that it's actually you applying for that loan. It doesn't always work, but they're pretty good. And then the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, they will help us link different jurisdictions together. So if you've been the victim here in Saanich, and you in Calgary, and you in Kingston, Ontario, and you've all fallen victim to the same scam, if you report it to police, maybe we can launch a national investigation and get that entire system shut down. It takes a long time, but a lot of people don't report. I don't know if they're ashamed or they're just so flabbergasted they don't know how it's happened. We can help with those things, and there is no shame in falling victim to this. It can happen to anyone. So we've talked about a lot of scary stuff, and this is really all you need to remember. So I want everybody to hold their hand up. So no matter what happens, you stop, take control, put your hand on your belly, take a big breath in, and out again. Do it again. What's that doing?
Relax.
Yeah, it's calming us down. It's helping us get back into our frontal cortex, which is our reasoning brain and our thinking brain. When we're overwhelmed and scared, we're usually not thinking clearly. If we calm down and slow things down, then we can check in with someone else, we can get some help, we can do our own research. If you do that, you will be safe. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stay as long as need be. I have lots of handouts, and there's also lots of resources on our website. Thank you.